Broad Branch. And if this is Abe's last meeting, heck, I'm going to make it my last meeting also. So, and it's not a bad idea. I'll spend more time with my family as well. So it's been a real fun experience these last 4 years. So thank you.
Chris?
Yeah, I'm Chris Frombeluti. I'm the vice chair of the commission. I represent 3G07, which is the area bounded by military, Reno, Nevada, and Nebraska. And this is not my last meeting. I will be with you guys for another 2 years, and I look forward to another exciting 2 years.
And I too will be back for the new commission that begins in January. We'll have 5 new commissioners then, so it's going to be interesting working with some new people. Okay, just a brief description of the procedures that we'll follow tonight. These are the typical procedures we've been following while we've been virtual on Zoom. The only ones with video now are the commissioners. And Abe Clayman is the co-host on video tonight on the Zoom. And so he will admit people to become panelists with video and audio as we get to those portions of the agenda. And you can also, if you have questions, you can put them in the Q&A. We're also using the chat tonight, so you can use the chat if you'd like. But I prefer if you have questions, particularly, put them in the Q&A. That way we can sort them out a little bit more easily. And Abe will be monitoring that Q&A, and if there are questions that need to be answered or comments from people in the audience, Abe will let us know and we can recognize them. I think we can also use the raise hand function if you have something you really need to say. We've got, as I said, a very full agenda tonight. The agenda has been published on the various listservs and on our website on Nextdoor. And there's one modification I would like to make about that, and that is the time allotment that we've given for the discussion about Lafayette Pre-K. We're probably going to use more time there than we had listed on our agenda. That's a topic that's very important to a lot of people, and we've got a lot of things to discuss. So we'll probably start the discussion of the resolution on the task force reports a little bit later than the time that we specified in the agenda. For those people who are waiting to hear from that, waiting for that item on the agenda, it'll probably be a little later than we originally proposed. Okay, with that clarification, all those in favor of adopting the agenda, raise your hand. 4-0, okay. I have just one announcement, and it has to do with the resolution that the ANC passed on July 27th, which was to remove the plaque and the name of Francis Newlands from the fountain at Chevy Chase Circle. And we have been working with the National Park Service to try to implement that. What the resolution said that we would ask the National Park Service to remove his name from the fountain. And since then, in July, we've had several meetings with the National Park Service, particularly with the superintendent for Rock Creek Park, which has jurisdiction over the circle. And they have advised us through their legal counsel and through several of their researchers that in order to remove the plaque or any of the name engraved on the fountain in Chevy Chase Circle, it would require literally an act of Congress. And so we have been talking with their legislative team about what that would include. We've also made contact with staff people in Representative Eleanor Holmes Norton's office and in Jamie Raskin's office. Jamie Raskin represents the district in Maryland, immediately adjacent to the circle. And we have a meeting scheduled actually with later this week with them to talk about the legislation. But this is going to take a while, obviously, and it'll be introduced in the next Congress. And in the meantime, we are also working with the National Park Service to prepare wayside exhibits. And that's a cooperative effort between the commission, the Friends of Chevy Chase Circle, Historic Chevy Chase DC, and the Chevy Chase Historical Society. And we're all working with them and others to come up with some descriptive materials that can be explanatory and helpful for anyone in the circle who sees the plaque there and the name there, Francis Newland, but it will put it in context and provide more information. So we're working on that, and the wayside exhibits can be done more quickly, certainly than legislation. We're hoping that that can be a matter of months in order to be able to have those wayside exhibits, and we'll keep you posted about that. Okay, Abe, do you have any announcements?
No, no announcements.
Jerry?
No announcements.
Chris? Okay. I know that there's one community announcement that I've been asked to acknowledge, and that is from Shanda Tuck Garfield, who's been a commissioner on the commission for 6 years. And Shanda, Abe, do you want to elevate Shanda to a panelist, and then she can make her announcement?
Sure. Shanda and anyone who I elevate to a panelist in the future, you're going to be briefly removed from the meeting, and then you'll rejoin as a panelist. So just know that that's going to happen.
Hi, Shanda.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Shanda.
Hello. I'm all set?
You're set.
Yes. I just wanted to speak this evening to thank everyone as your commissioner. For those of you who may not know, I've served you, or may not know, I've served you for the past 6 years proudly as a commissioner for ANC3 GO2. You may know that for the past year, I've been traveling back and forth from the US to Amsterdam. And despite that, I've continued to do my duties. However, I recently learned in the past week that unfortunately, because I do still live in the Chevy Chase community, however, not in the exact SMD area that I represent you, that I will not be allowed to vote this evening. But I want you to know that I am proud of you as a community. And I want to just say a few words to you and thank the commission. And I'm sharing partially what I recently wrote to our community work group. As you know, aside from that, I've been the co-facilitator along with Commissioner Speck and Mallets on the ANC Task Force on Racism. And that has been a phenomenal groundbreaking group, which, as the community knows, produced 3 work group reports totaling over 80 pages that will take our community into a historic new position. I'm so proud of that work, but I'm also proud of the work that I did for you as treasurer. And to the community, you can know that our treasury is good and we're on a solid financial footing. These past few months, these 6 months during COVID, our community has really stepped up. You all, despite the pandemic, have not only come out and worked on initiatives such as the task force, but you've supported our efforts with the Oregon Avenue Rehabilitation Project, which, as you know, is almost coming to fruition. And you supported numerous other efforts that we've worked on. So we have a lot to be proud of as a community. And so with that, I just want to say that, and in the words of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, which I think is timely, that we are working to create a beloved community, a community that thankfully will look at diversity and inclusion as a place where we can all walk together. And so I thank you for that, and know that you'll still see me on the Avenue, and please reach out via text and email. And I want you to know, had I voted, I would have voted yes to affirm this along with other issues supporting our community. But I thank you all. And I especially thank the commissioners for the work we've done together. I thank the task force members. And I also thank Mayor Bowser and Councilmember Todd and Che for the support that they've given me as the commissioner for ANC3 GO2. And so with that, I say I lift everyone up, and I lift Chevy Chase up, and know that Chevy Chase, along with the fountain work and all this work, is going to do good things.
Thank you, Shanda. I just want to say too, I personally appreciate all that you've done for the commission over the last 6 years. And I recruited you 6 years ago to come to this job, and I've never regretted that. You've done tremendous work, and I really appreciate it, particularly in the last year on the task force, which you led very, very ably. And then also on the work that you've done as treasurer in extraordinarily difficult times. And I really appreciate it. It was very, very difficult over the last 6 months, particularly because we didn't have access to our office. And you and Alan Beach just did a wonderful job of keeping us in compliance with the financial records that we needed to have. So we really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And shout out to Alan. We can't forget him. Great support.
Yeah. Jerry?
Yeah, I'd just like to say that over the last 6 months, as Shanda mentioned, she, Randy, and I worked together on the task force on racism, and we hadn't had the opportunity to work together too much before, even though we were on the same commission, but not really on the same projects per se. And I got to know Shanda better. We spoke many times over the phone, long conversations. We learned a lot from each other, I think. We shared resources all the time. And I appreciate the work that she did on that task force and other things as well. And it was fun working with her and getting to know her better.
Thanks, Jerry.
Okay, I see Gary Thompson's got his hand up, and Abe, could you recognize Gary and let him?
Sure, I'm just gonna recognize Gary. If I can find him, there you are, and just allow you to talk. So you won't be video, but just go for it, Gary.
Oops, he is.
Okay, thank you for recognizing me. I also wanted to say thank you to my ANC commissioner, Shanda Garfield, and to say thank you for 6 amazing years of service to our community, especially for our own single member district. You know, being on the ANC is all volunteer time away from family, away from children. You know, this goes equally for everybody on the ANC. It's deeply appreciated. In our case, Commissioner Tuck Garfield handled a lot of the logistics of Oregon Avenue reconstruction and 100 other issues, too many to mention. But of course, especially as of late, her leadership on our task force on racism has been exemplary, and that work will continue for many years to come. So I just wanted to take this moment as well to join in and say thank you.
Thank you, Gary.
Thank you, Gary. Okay, I saw there's some other comments in the chat also praising your work and thanking you, Shanda, and we really do appreciate it.
Yes, and I know some people may be wondering about the future. As you know, there will be a new commissioner for your district. He will be sworn in January, and I'm sure he will ably continue to represent the interests of ANC3 for GO2. And so you all can have that to look forward to as well. Know that state of the district is great.
Abe?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, Shanda, it's been a pleasure working with you, and I wish you all the best, and I hope to see you on the Avenue, especially once all this nutty stuff is over and, you know, people can actually talk to each other closer than 6 feet. So looking forward to that.
Thanks, Abe.
Chris?
Yeah, I just wanted to say thanks to Shanda, and also thanks to the other departing commissioners, Abe, Becky, and Dan. I've worked with all of you, and I've enjoyed it. It's been a good 2 years, and thanks to all.
Thank you, guys. And thanks to the community for sticking in there with the commission and supporting us. You know, this is volunteer work, but we appreciate you as a community. Please continue to use your voices and speak out. It's very important. Thank you all.
Okay. Thank you, Shanda.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is discussion of and possible vote on a Class B liquor license renewal for the Broad Branch Market. at 5608 Broad Branch Road. And that's Jerry's single member district. So Jerry, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, I see Tracy's on here now, so we can, I didn't see her name at first, but I see her initials. So we're just going to discuss and vote on a Class B liquor license renewal for Broad Branch Market, which is at 5608 Broad Branch. And this is nothing more than a renewal. They're not asking for anything new on there, but I'll let Tracy present it. She's on TS. You have her, Abe? Yes, okay.
She's being promoted to a panelist now.
You're on mute,
Tracy,
Tracy.
you're muted.
There I am. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Great. How are you guys doing?
good.
Okay.
Good. Yeah, as Jerry said, this is just a renewal. I think this is probably in the 13 years we've been there. I think this is like our 4th renewal. You know, I can't ever remember if I renew for 2 years or 3 years, whatever they allow, but it's just the same thing. Exactly what we have off premise only for sale from, you know, I don't even think we ever amended our hours. So our hours are still 9 a.m. until we close, you know, which right now is at 7 p.m. So nothing different. And it still has the tasting endorsement, though we've not been able to do any real tastings during, you know, so we're looking forward to that coming back then. That would be.
I think we all are, yes.
Yeah, I know. Exactly.
Yes.
So I don't know if anybody has any questions, but it's pretty straightforward.
I have
Extremely straightforward. Jerry, you want to make a motion that we support?
Yeah, I make a motion that we support Broad Branch's renewal for their Class B liquor license.
Is there a second? Chris?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, raise your hand. 4-0. Okay, thanks, Tracy.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Happy holidays.
Same to you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is also in Jerry's bailiwick. He's been the spearhead for the commission on all matters related to the businesses on Connecticut Avenue, and particularly on the new Chevy Chase Main Street. So Jerry, you want to take that one?
Sure. I assume Brianne is on here someplace. Let me just make sure I see her on here. No. Maybe she's listed as Woodley Park Main Street.
That's right. I'm promoting you to panelist now, Brianne.
Okay. So as you all know, we had well, mostly people know that we were awarded a Main Street grant. It was rescinded through the efforts of a lot of people, especially Mary Che. It was awarded again, and we now officially are a Main Street. I think the 26th Main Street in the district, and Brianne Dornbush is the executive director of District Bridges, which won the award to represent Chevy Chase as a Main Street. So I'll just turn it over to Brianne, and she could give you the happy update on everything.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jerry. And I also just want to say a huge thanks to the ANC at large. This was not a one person or two person advocacy effort. The ANC went to bat for us. Mary Che has been an enormous advocate for the Chevy Chase Main Street, and a lot of community members who wrote letters of support. So this really is a community-based initiative. There's a lot of momentum and energy behind it. And while we had a little bit of a bumpy road to get started, I am really excited. We plan to be making an offer to a program manager this week, with the getting a start date as of the beginning of the new year. And so we will be getting the program up and running as quickly as humanly possible. There's a lot going on in the background. We're propping up a website and getting all of our background infrastructure in place and ready to go. So we will be getting started. One of the exciting things that we will be launching, if there are any business owners on this call, there are 2 grants that are out right now. There is the Robust Retail and the Bridge Fund grant. If you are looking at those applications and have any questions, any challenges, struggles, any concerns, please reach out. I will drop our Chevy Chase Main Street email address into the chat, and that can be sent around, but please feel free to reach out directly to us. We have a full team that's ready to help support any businesses wanting to apply for those specific grants prior to our new program manager getting started. So please consider us here to support you. The Main Street already is in existence. We just need the program manager to be running it. And so please see us as a resource. We're here to help. Starting in January, we will be launching our first round of competitive grants. And we're going to do an extended grant period to make sure that all businesses have the opportunity to apply, that we can work, our program manager will be working directly with you in case you need support in writing your application. We do our competitive grants with an independent review committee, just to make sure that everything is very transparent and fair, but we're going to be on the ground running that grant cycle starting in January. And then we'll be also working on some promotional campaigns and really getting the word out about what the Main Street is, what we can do, and how we can be supporting both the small businesses and the broader community in Chevy Chase. So I'm happy to answer any questions. We will be putting out a lot more information starting once we get a program manager. I don't want to inundate people with information and then have to redirect them to a new person once we have them in place. But we have an amazing deck of candidates, and so the hiring decision has actually been rather difficult, but we're going to have a really great person to be serving the businesses and a great addition to the District Bridges team. And we are just, this has been a hard fought Main Street to bring to bear, and we're just really, really excited. We are hoping for a very, very good 2021. And anything better than 2020 will be a win. So I'm happy to take any questions that you guys have immediately, but we'll be sending out a lot more information starting in the new year.
If there aren't, as we're waiting for those questions to come in, it's like I'm on a talk radio show. As we're waiting for the phones to light up, I just want to mention that District Bridges, Brianne specifically, in the midst of this pandemic, when this grant opportunity first arose, she took the time to come here, and we walked the avenue together, socially distant with masks on, for a couple of hours, stopped in front of every single business, she asked all the questions about this. So even from before they received this grant, it was clear the investment that they wanted to make in this community and how interested they were in everybody and how much they wanted to learn. So I knew we had a winner right from the start. So thank you.
Thank you, Jerry.
Brianne, thank you very much. I know this has been a little bit of a trying time for the last couple of months, but now it looks like we're really on our way. I know you've been in close contact with Jerry, and while he's been on the commission, that's been fantastic for keeping us involved and keeping us informed. But feel free to continue to reach out to us, and particularly the new commissioners who are going to be representing businesses along the avenue. That's going to be Peter Goslin and Connie Chang. And if you can keep them posted on everything that's going on, it would really be appreciated, because we need to have the ANC continue to support Main Street and to be involved in that process. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. And one other thing I'll mention, we will be doing some public information sessions that will be open to businesses, will be open to residents, to really give a more detailed information about what the Main Street is all about. and how people can get involved and what kind of support businesses can get. So that will be something that will be coming in the new year as well. So we'll definitely make sure to get that out to all of the commissioners as well as the residents in Chevy Chase.
Okay, Abe, there was one question, Q&A, I think.
Yeah, Michael Zeldin, incoming commissioner, asked what is being done to let every business know of the grant application process. So Brianne, if you could talk about that for a second, we'd appreciate it.
Yeah, so when we launch the grants, we have a newsletter that goes out weekly. It really depends on the program. Some of our programs send out their newsletters twice a week. Some of them send them out once a week, but it's just, when COVID first launched, we were sending out newsletters 3 times a week just because there was so much information. So as we, build up our mailing list, we send information out via email, but a lot of the relationship development that happens with early Main Streets is in person. Obviously with COVID, that's a little bit challenging, but we have printed off grant applications, flyers and information, one pagers and postcard type information that we literally walk around to each business. We walk in, they see our face, we tell them who we are, we tell them what we're doing. Our team is very much on the ground. Obviously that will become more and more easy as COVID dissipates, hopefully very soon. But we do a combination of phone calls, internet outreach, marketing, and then a lot of in-person. We try to cover and make sure that we have been in the door of every single business and gotten them the information. It takes time to kind of build up those networks. Fortunately, Chevy Chase has a very active, engaged community. And so we have a lot of those contacts already. And so we'll be reaching out to those. But obviously, anyone who's on this call or has contacts, if you want to send them directly to the email that I'll share, please do. We always need more contacts. The more robust our information data sets, the more accurately we can get out information to all of our businesses and community partners.
And one last quick thing, because I know we have a packed agenda, specifically the 2 grants that Brianne mentioned. I've been sending out emails to all the businesses about these, and last week District Bridges prepared material. So I had a package of information that I sent out to all of the businesses, and I told them who they could contact at District Bridges, the team there. And I've received a lot of emails from people. I know when I walk around the avenue, which I do a lot, they've asked me about it, and I'm sending them. I answer what I can, but I'm sending them to District Bridges. So they are aware of this. I've sent many of them texts when I have their cell phone numbers. I send them the emails, and this is all information that I'll be giving Brianne when the time comes also.
And we've been getting a lot of those emails and have been responding as they come in. So we have a very active team. So if you send us an email request, particularly around the grant questions, we will be very quick to get you a response.
Okay, thank you, Brianne.
You bet. Thank you.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is the primary topic of our discussion tonight. And I know a lot of you are here to listen to this. We're going to discuss the proposal that has been made to relocate the Lafayette Elementary School pre-K 4 from its location on Broad Branch Avenue to 1375 Missouri Avenue. And we've got several people from DCPS who are with us tonight. And Abe, if you could elevate to panelist, Dr. Carrie Brocard, who's the principal at Lafayette. And then I'm going to ask Carrie to tell us who else we need to identify here from, particularly the DCPS people. I didn't see Claudia Lujan. I thought maybe she would be here tonight.
Hi, Commissioner Speck. How are you this evening?
Good.
Good. Sarah Parker is on. Claudia Lujan is on.
Okay.
Andrea Swiatoka, Swiatoch. Teresa Biagioni. And Commissioner Clayman, just let me know if I'm going too quick.
Yeah, sorry, I misclicked there. Sorry, Sarah Parker.
Yep.
And I don't see Claudia Lujan. Is it possible that it's a different name? Or
I will chat with her on I'll ping her and see.
and then you said Andrea Swiatocha?
Swiatoka, yep.
Swiatoka,
SWIA. No worries.
Got it.
Claudia is on. Lujan is LUJAN. Maybe she's logged in with a different name. You know how sometimes.
Yeah, I think it's a different name,
Yeah.
what it looks like.
And then our LSAT co-chairs are on as well. I'm not sure. Commissioner Speck had asked them to join us. So if you'd like to promote them to presenters, they are Catherine Young and Carrie Cassidy.
Okay, we found Claudia. She's under her kid's name.
Oh, good.
Which
It's happening with lots of parents.
I'm gonna start rambling all the kids' names.
Yeah, it happens.
You said Carrie Cassidy
Uh-huh.
and Catherine Young.
Yep.
Okay. And am I missing anyone? I think that's everybody you need.
I think those are the sort of primary question answerers and such.
Okay.
Okay, the way we're going to do this tonight, and we've had a number of presentations. Carrie has put on 2 very good presentations in the last couple of weeks about this proposal. And I'm going to just give a brief recap, and then we're going to go into some questions because we were monitoring the chat in those meetings, and there were a number of questions that we had ourselves or that others had raised that we didn't think were completely answered, and we needed a little bit further discussion about it. So let me just give a little bit of background, and I'm pinch hitting tonight for Becky because she's the commissioner who's been all things Lafayette for the last 6 years. But in November, late November, the ANC learned of a proposal to relocate the Lafayette Pre-K from its campus on Broad Branch to Missouri Avenue, which is about 2.5 miles away and is out of the school boundaries. The proposal was to use the Latin American Montessori Bilingual Public Charter School, LAM, for all of Lafayette's Pre-K 4 classes to alleviate the overcrowding at Lafayette. And based on some of the documents that we had, in 2003, the district sold this building, the building on Missouri Avenue that was then known as the Military Road School, to LAM for $1 million. LAM subsequently made renovations and additions to the building. And by at least the early February of this year, DCPS had begun the process to reacquire that facility by reprogramming money in the budget, about $8.376 million to the capital budget. The district said that the purchase was justified to help to alleviate current and projected overcrowding in Upper Ward 4 schools, such as Lafayette Elementary School, Brightwood Elementary School, and Shepherd Elementary School. The property has, according to the documents, 8 large classrooms, office and pull-out space, a full cooking kitchen, a playground, and parking. And in July 2020, the mayor asked the council to approve the reprogramming of the funds to help solve the Ward 4 overcrowding problem at nearby schools or expanded early childhood offerings. The Lafayette Local School Advisory Team learned of this proposal on November 18th. DCPS has since reached out to the community, as I mentioned, in these 2 virtual meetings on December 2nd and December 9th, and made presentations about the need to have additional classrooms for pre-K and the potential for using this space on Missouri Avenue. And I think Abe can put up a couple of links. One is the link to the minutes of that LSAT meeting on November 18th, and the other is the presentation that was made at the December 2nd meeting that Carrie chaired. And those meetings were attended by about 125 people at each meeting. DCPS has advised the commission that the decision will be made about the location of the Lafayette Pre-K in late January or early February, and that the final decision will be made by the mayor and DCPS Chancellor Louis Farabee. The ANC invited the people from DCPS to attend tonight's meeting. We really appreciate their being with us. And most of the questions that we're going to have are taken from the chat at those meetings earlier in December. And so we didn't think, because I know a lot of people have already seen those presentations, we didn't think it was necessary to have another presentation, but we're just going to go right into the questions. I would note too that we've got a couple of people attending tonight. I saw in the list of attendees that Candace Nelson is here, and she is the ANC commissioner for the Brightwood area, and both Brightwood Elementary School and the Lamb School. And Fraser O'Leary is also on is attending tonight, and he is the Ward 4 State School Board representative. So we're glad to have them here too. Okay, let me go to, first of all, and
I also noticed Ruth Wattenberg, who's the school board president.
Oh, I didn't see Ruth on there. Thank you, Jerry.
It also seems we've got a representative from Janice Lewis George's office. There's someone whose name is Team Janice, so I'm not sure who that is, but just good to have many people.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we appreciate all these people who are there for particularly this important topic. I've divided these questions up into several categories, and the first is general planning issues. And I would invite particularly the DCPS people to chime in on these questions, because I know you are ultimately going to be making this, DCPS is going to be making the decision, and some of these issues also go beyond just Lafayette. And so I don't know who would be best to answer some of these questions, but I'll leave it to you to decide. And by the way, I did give all of these questions in advance to DCPS. The first is with regard to the 2020 School Master Facilities Plan and the annual supplement. The supplement for 2019 came out on December 18th last year, and I just wondered when the supplement is going to come out for 2020, so that we will know in a broader sense what the Master Facilities Plan is. Sarah, are you the right person, or Claudia?
I can speak to that.
Okay, thanks, Claudia.
Hopefully you can hear me. I'm actually going to speak to the first two questions because they're a little bit related to each other. Okay. And so I'll try and address both of them at the same time. Essentially, how planning works from a enrollment and capacity process internally at DCPS is my team works very closely with Andrea's team, who's the facilities team. My team creates annual school-based projections. So there were some questions, and I'll get to that a little bit later in terms of how our accuracy to those school-based projections. We create projections on an annual basis that just looks 1 year ahead. And it looks at the school's previous enrollment trends. And we use a methodology that is a very typical methodology that most districts use. We have all of that information available online. And we basically look at sort of what's called a cohort survival method. And we look at what the trends are over time, and then we work, and schools have an opportunity to petition and so forth. So we have an annual projection process that we go through. But we also work very closely with the Office of the Deputy Mayor, who works on the long-term projections. So the Master Facilities Plan is their main document that has established both 5 and 10-year projections. Now, the reason that that office is best positioned to do that type of work is because they actually have access to a broader set of data. So they don't just have access to DCPS data, but they have access to citywide public school data. So while we can only look at our trends from our own schools, they know which schools and which families are also attending charter schools and so forth, particularly charter schools. And so they, through the master facilities plan, do a 5 and 10-year look at that is sort of on the ground and make annual projections. And then we also work with that group, that team, on longer term projections, which also informs both the capital improvement plan as well as our long-term facility planning and modernizations.
You're frozen now. Claudia, we've lost your connection. The wonderful technology.
Well, let's move on.
Really the best person to speak to this.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it usually
no.
comes right back. I promise.
I know.
I'll see what's happening.
This is pretty content specific. So
Sorry, I'm right back. I'm
Okay.
sorry.
Okay.
So, sorry. Yeah.
I'm gonna do it.
Sorry, the DME is the agency responsible for the master facility plan. They are currently, as I understand it, the 2020 facilities plan supplement is currently in the process and is supposed to be released soon by the deputy mayor's office. And again, that they take building information, they work closely with Andrea's team, they take enrollment information that we have, as well as their citywide view of enrollment schools. And then they sort of assess for the master facilities plan. That was one of the questions, but also just wanted to put it in context for what my team does from an enrollment and planning perspective, and how we work closely with the deputy mayor's team to think more broadly across 5 and 10 years. One of the other questions that was posed was around the accuracy of projections, and particularly sort of what that looks like. I think there was even a question raised in terms of the accuracy at Lafayette compared to Merch and some other schools nearby. We do have, and I believe Carrie in her presentations also that were done in the previous meetings did share where we had, where actual enrollment numbers did compare to the projections that went into that year. And for the most part, when we look back to 2014 and 2015, particularly at Lafayette, there were 2 years that we were off. The biggest year was the year of the modernization, school year 16-17, where we were under about 50 students. Our projection was under about 50 students. And then school year 18-19, where our projection was under about 30 students. The remaining 4 years within that time frame, the difference between what the projection was and where they actually landed was not more than 10 students, either up or down. Mostly it was under. So in school year 15-16, the school enrolled 7 more students than the projection. In 17-18, there were 6 students under the projection. So for the most part, there definitely were years that were off, and that is not unusual across the board. You know, projections are projections for a reason. We do our best to estimate. But it is particularly for schools like Lafayette and Merch and others. Kindergarten is typically the hardest grade to project because that is the entry grade. And so that is just a harder, there's a lot of other factors that we need to consider. Families that didn't attend pre-K, obviously we know that the school doesn't have capacity for pre-K for all inbounded families, and then really looking at what other families are coming in at kindergarten. So that is a little bit more about the projection process in particular.
Claudia, can I interrupt and ask how this particular proposal fits into the overall master plan? And is this a proposal to just temporarily house pre-K 4 at the Lamb School, or is it a permanent proposal?
Yep. So great question. The issue of the Wilson feeder pattern overcrowding is not, as you guys very well know, is not a new issue. It's something that we have been trying to figure out solutions for over the last several years. We have schools throughout the feeder pattern, Lafayette being one of them, that are currently over capacity and that are projected in the master facilities plan to be continue to be over capacity at really high numbers. So the notion of, a couple years ago, we pulled together a community working group with representatives from all schools across the feeder pattern to try and come up with different potential options, both from a capital side, from a programmatic side, and from a policy side. At that moment in time, we did not have additional facility or space. As you guys probably know, the facilities team work closely with many schools to try and maximize the space that we have available, including Lafayette, in terms of how do we reconfigure the current space, as well as trying to get capital funds to do either additions or trailers that we've seen throughout the feeder pattern. But we are still struggling with, there's not a necessarily silver bullet solution. It's not something that we have been able to figure out. We have overcapacity issues at the elementary level, as well as the secondary level at Deal and at Wilson. And so it's something that we've been trying to figure out for many years. And as a result, in the last few master facilities and capital plans, there have been, and Andrea can probably speak to this a little bit more detail, but there have been line items or so forth, basically calling out or putting aside some money to figure out how to help for those overcapacity.
Once again, lost you.
This last CIP, it's something that we have constantly been trying to figure out. There was a chat and you had mentioned earlier in terms of how do we, when we knew we had it, and why the delay in notifying the community from November to April. So I'll sort of talk a little bit about that. And then,
well, can you first of all just answer the question that I asked, which was, is this a permanent move to?
Yes, it would be
permanent or temporary.
The proposal would be to permanently move pre-K4. Yes.
Okay, so it's not planning on coming back at all, or to any other location in this neighborhood.
Not our current thinking. Now, again, we don't have access to any other location. And again, should that change in the future, would we want to revisit that? Probably, yeah. But I can't tell you right now that that another space will open up. And so therefore I don't want to kind of, yeah. Again, as it opens up like this one, we would want to explore that for sure.
Jerry, you want to ask a question?
Ask a follow-up question.
Sure.
When I look at the projections, which, if the projections, when Lafayette was renovated, the projections didn't seem to take a lot into account because it was built for the current, not for much in the future. But my question is really, with all of the discussion and part of the mayor's plan for an increase in affordable housing west of the park, we're talking about potentially a lot more increase. And stopgap measures just aren't going to make a difference. And none of them are reflected in any of the projections that I see. None of them are based on potential housing increases in any area. So I was wondering, you're talking about another facility to move into, and this is going to be permanent, but it doesn't seem to be that DCPS and the Office of Planning are communicating because they want something and your projections are not reflecting what they want.
So I do think the projections I think you're referring to are the ones that Carrie put on, which were their school-based projections. I do want to note that there's a difference between the school-based projections and the master facility plan projections. The MFP projections, the DME actually does work closely with the Office of Planning. They look at pipeline housing data. They look at, they also in the past have reached out to Department of Health for birth data, other information as much as possible. And so those kinds of coordination with the Office of Planning does happen as it relates to the master facilities plan. So the master facilities plan has Lafayette over the next 5 or 10 years at like 130% capacity. So for us, this is why this triggered the urgency to explore this alternative. This is not the one-all solution for Lafayette's long-term space needs. But it is something that we can help alleviate their space issues in the next few years. So again, I think we have, particularly not just Lafayette, some of our other schools, there's not going to be one necessarily, we don't have access to that one silver bullet solution that's going to address it for the next 5 or 10 years. And so we're trying to figure out how to leverage the resources and spaces we have available to at least try and alleviate, and in some cases, maybe even.
Let me ask this then about that, the overcrowding at Lafayette and what you're going to do about it. Are you considering boundary changes at all?
That's a great question. We are, I believe the idea was to engage in potential new boundary process after 2022, after we had additional census data. I'm not sure yet if that is still the plan. I know that that was something that was proposed at the last time the boundary redrawing happened. And I think that, again, for schools that are overcrowded, a boundary change is definitely something that should be explored. The boundary change process, though, is something that's definitely much more comprehensive. It's something that we would have to engage in a much longer study for, that would really impact not just one school, but all of the surrounding schools as we see.
Well, we're definitely interested in those things.
Yeah, and I will say though, you know, when we explored the work through overcrowding a couple years ago through a community working group, you know, boundaries came up, and it was something that folks were very apprehensive to go down.
I agree. I understand.
Because when we're talking about an overcrowded school, boundary change typically results in the shrinking of the boundary. And so it's something that is, we can't take lightly, obviously. And so it's something that in the previous working group that we had was really off the table, and folks were not interested in exploring that as a solution.
Will the acquisition of the GDS property or the revival, I guess, of the old Hardy School, will those provide any relief whatsoever for the overcrowding at Lafayette?
I don't believe so. We are.
Okay. That's fine. I think we just
they
need
are
to
two.
go on to the next question.
The buildings are very far south.
Right.
But the location proximity is such that even in a sort of ripple effect, it's not going to make any major impact on Lafayette.
Okay. Well, basically, the proposal that's been discussed has two alternatives. One is to move to the Lamb School, and the other is to cut back pre-K 4, which nobody really wants to do. Are there any other alternatives that you are considering at this point?
I do think that there are alternatives as it relates to the Lafayette space. I mean, I think from the Lafayette's perspective, it really is for next year, either a reduction in their capacity for pre-K 4 or a move. If for some reason, and again, the decision is not yet final, if for some reason the chancellor and the mayor decide to not move forward with Lafayette's move, then we would want to really think about how to leverage that site for other things. But right now, as it relates to Lafayette, in terms of the alternatives, I also believe Carrie's presentation had talked about, there was worked with the facilities team on the trailer, whether or not there was an ability to bring trailers in to with these space constraints that are already projected for next year. Those were explored. That didn't seem to be.
Have you thought about trailers in another location other than at the Lafayette campus, for instance, at the Episcopal School? If you couldn't use the buildings at the Episcopal schools, the trailer is located there. Is that a possibility?
Claudia, I'm happy to chime in on that. I think, unfortunately, no, because we would still be using a property that's not DC government owned. So we would still have to enter into some type of lease with them, even if it's just land lease. And then we would also have to have funding to construct the trailers as well. So it actually have a sort of a twofold impact.
So you mentioned at one of the previous presentations that spending money for a lease was a non-starter, I think somebody said, because you couldn't move funds around within the operating budget. Is that really true? Is there no opportunity at all to move money between different functions in the operating budget, or is it all fixed and can't be moved at all? Just as there was a repurposing of a lot of the funds in the capital budget to purchase the Lamb School. And can't there be something done in the operating budget in a similar way?
So, okay, so yes, there was, for the purchase of the building, yes, there were funds that were reprogrammed from a capital program to our capital in order to purchase. From an operating standpoint, it's not so much reallocating, it's more of just the citywide budget constraint. Yes, there are a lot of different pots of money, and I'm not the operating expert by any means, but certainly operating that goes to pay all the staff across the city, different supplies and stuff. So it's not so much that it can't be reallocated, it's just the amount and the budget pressures that the city is under. I think we are certainly limited in the operating that we have. And if we chose to spend it there, we'd probably have to sacrifice other things within the operating budget. And at this time, we're just not able to accept that.
Has that been explored at all to at least determine what the cost would be for a lease? For instance, at the Episcopal School, either for trailers or for using some of their buildings?
Not at that particular school, no.
Okay, so that really hasn't been costed out, so you don't know how much that's going to cost. Okay.
That's correct.
Okay. Is there anything in the offing for possible purchase of the Episcopal campus?
We are definitely interested at this time. When we last spoke with them, even as of late last week, and appreciate the contact, they're still not interested, at least to us, they were not openly interested in considering a purchase. If that ever comes back on the table, we are certainly more than interested in considering that. Certainly pending available funding, but I think certainly we've demonstrated that there's a need in this area.
You're aware that they're in negotiations with Murray for the land and one of the 4 buildings to lease, correct?
That was just shared with me today, yes.
Okay.
That was the first that I had heard of that, yep.
Okay, so how does that impact any of the negotiations that you might have with them? Were you aware that they were already negotiating with Murray?
We were not. I think we can certainly follow back up with them, but yeah, I was not until a few hours ago. They did not indicate that when we spoke with them last week.
Okay, so obviously they are open to doing something.
From what I saw in the deal, it's a little bit hard to understand if it's actual purchase or it could be a lease, which Murray has done again with other options. So without knowing more, it's hard to tell whether it's a purchase or a lease.
So it might be that they're open to it. It's just a matter of how much.
Right.
I'll also say that the conversation last week that the facilities team and DGS reached out to ECC wasn't the first time. So the first time that we reached out to ECC was back in the spring when we are looking at different opportunities. And at that point they had this, they were not interested in that purchase. So I do want to make folks know that the ECE option wasn't new to us in this last couple of weeks, but it's something that we had explored in the past, and they had a similar response back then.
There are, as I understand it, 8 classrooms at the Lamb School. Was there any consideration of moving, rather than moving pre-K there, moving 5th grade there, for instance? I think 8 classrooms, you don't have eight classes of 5th graders. So did you think about that as a possibility?
So there are a total of 8 classrooms. There are only 6 classrooms that are actually available next year. There's 2 lower level classrooms that are not the right size for to be full classrooms. And without additional capital money, we aren't able to make those rooms the appropriate size for full-time classrooms. So they're technically 8 spaces that could be used as classrooms, but only 6 is what's available for planning for next year. I think to your question around the upper grades, it is something that there's a couple reasons that we did not pursue that. One is just from a space perspective. Right now, as you guys know, our pre-K rooms and our pre classes are much more of a controlled valve in terms of how many we open or close. When students have rights, families have rights to K through 5 as their in-boundary school. And so we have to serve as many families as come in. And as you can see right now, I believe, Carrie, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I believe we're already going up to 7 sections in 4th grade next year. And so we're already past the 6 that are available, but we don't have that much control unless we do a boundary shift to actually control those numbers. And so really wanting to leave the biggest site with most opportunity, which is the original broadband site, for the compulsory grades. This building is also, as we think about the use of rooms, when you move the upper grades, they obviously need specials rooms that they use with other, up. While pre-K rooms, they do a lot of their special work within their own cohort and don't need as much space for that kind of thing. I believe the also site is just probably a little more suitable for the younger ones if we compare across the span. And then Carrie also mentioned, the impacted families. We'd have way more impacted families if we move the upper grades than if we were to move the little ones.
Okay, let me ask a few questions about the Brightwood community and what outreach have you had to the Brightwood community? And I'm thinking particularly about the Brightwood Elementary School staff, to the ANC 4A, to the council member-elect Janice Lewis George, to state school board member Fraser O'Leary, or to the Brightwood Community Association. I've talked with a bunch of these people, and this came as a big surprise to them that they were not informed about this. Was there a reason why you didn't consult with the Brightwood community?
So we have had a conversation with the Brightwood principal to talk about the Lafayette proposal and get his thinking on what that meant for him, to also sort of assess, because again, Brightwood is on, we said before, Brightwood is on our list of schools to watch from a future projection and future capacity issue. When we compare it to where Lafayette is, Lafayette's needs from a space perspective are much more acute. But we did have a great conversation with him in terms of one, the potential impact that this proposal would have on his community, is that a site that he would like to leverage for his community or not? So we did conversations. We are thinking about, as we push back the decision timeline to late January, early February, in our initial conversation with him, really talking about what could this look like in terms of engaging his parent community broader, and whether that's something that we would want to do. In terms of the ANC and civic associations, I believe that per regulation, I think that DGS is required to notify the ANC of where the building is located when at the time that I think we put in a proposal for purchase. So it was at that point that the notification was sent. Otherwise, my team has not had any direct conversations with any of the council member representatives or the ANCs. I know that Principal Burkhardt did make sure that the different communities had access to at least the flyers for the different communities that meetings that happened a week or two ago.
Jerry?
My understanding that Brightwood had somewhere over 50 students on a wait list for pre-K. Isn't this new school right across the street from them? And they're still going to be on a wait list?
Yeah, so we have a lot of schools that have pre-K wait lists. And so we look at is, so what we do look at is one, looking at both in-boundary demand and out-of-boundary demand. They do have some in-boundary waitlist demand. I think majority of is out-of-boundary waitlist demand. And then obviously when we look at, that looks very different compared to Brightwood as you look at Lafayette, where most of their demand at pre-K is in boundary. So again, like I mentioned, Brightwood has is and has been on our sort of watch list from a future perspective of when would we think that they are needing additional space, and what does that look like in terms of future relief for space issues. And so it's not something that we did not look at or consider. But I think that, again, when we were looking at the different proposals and where things are and what their acute needs were, that the reason that Lafayette rose to the top as initial proposal is because it's something that we have been trying to figure out for much longer, and really just didn't have, and outside of honestly this site, don't have another good solution yet for Lafayette.
A school right across the street that does have a wait list, as opposed to a school that's 2.5 miles away that has a wait list, that you look for a solution much closer to the original school, whether it be through a lease or some other facility or something, rather than, it seems you're going to keep creating potential problems rather than looking at everything as a whole.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And I think that, we've gotten a lot of feedback from different community members and parents about that. And I think that that's something that we need to, think about and consider before a decision is made.
Well, we are concerned about the impact that this will have in the Brightwood community. Have you thought about any possibility of making the Lamb facility available to Brightwood students as well, so that it's not just going to be Lafayette? Is there capacity to do that? Is it a possibility?
Yeah, I mean, I think we definitely, if this is not going to be available for Lafayette, we should definitely be exploring it as.
No, I'm thinking even if it is available to Lafayette,
yeah.
Is that going to mean that Brightwood students who live across the street, for instance, are not going to be able to go there?
Yeah, no, I think that's a fair question. We did get at the last community meeting a couple of proposals of why not give a preference to Brightwood families also for that spot. I will say, I think what we want to be really thoughtful about is not creating competition for Brightwood. Not bringing in our own competition within DCPS. We already have a lot of competition with charter schools in the city. But when we open up a different site, unless we are moving the Brightwood program and creating a 2-campus site for Brightwood, which does not do that, by creating just another option, you are creating a new programmatic option that has a potential to pull students from the Brightwood boundary. And so that's just something we have to be thoughtful about. That's something that the principal raised concerns about as well. There is a difference between school options that currently already exist. Lamb currently exists, has existed for a long time. That community was used to that school being there. Lafayette is a current option that does exist. This proposal does not come with a boundary change in any way, which is something that the school Brightwood was very much interested in understanding what that dynamic was. So I do think that we just have, again, I don't think it's off the table. I think it's something that has been proposed that we need to think about, but I do think it's a little bit more nuanced when we are bringing in a brand new option as a competing option across the street than just relocating an option that currently exists. And I think that we have to, I want to be really thoughtful about that, particularly for schools who have strong enrollment, but may still have, we don't want to undermine any enrollment pipeline that isn't, really strong and super established.
You mentioned before that if Lafayette does not go to the Lamb School for pre-K, the building would be used for something else. Is this really just a one-time opportunity then for Lafayette? If they don't take it for the next school year, then it's not going to be available after that?
It's a good question. I don't know if I'll be able to fully answer that now without knowing if they don't do it, what the plan is. What I will say is that if we end up moving another school, I will want to be, again, thoughtful about doing that and then saying, having to move them again 2 years later, right? So like, I think we want to be thoughtful of like the types of moves that we're doing. And so similar to your earlier question, like, is this temporary or not? I wouldn't want to do something that's super temporary if we're not replacing with an option that is more amenable or speaks better to what the parents are interested in. So I'm not sure I can fully answer that question, and because we don't yet know if Lafayette, it doesn't go there, what will be the plan for that? Different options would, I think, lend itself to different answers to that question.
Okay. Has there been any analysis? Do you have any data on the number of parents of pre-K kids who would elect to go to Lamb as opposed to wanting to stay at Lafayette, who might not go to Lamb at all, but nevertheless would go to kindergarten at Lafayette? Have you done
Yeah,
any
so-
analysis of that?
I can speak to that,
Families.
Claudia, if you want me to. Do you want me
Mhm.
to? I was busily
Sure.
typing away in the chat. Sorry. We every year, just to help everybody sort of understand how our pre-K4 waitlist works, is every year the initial set of people get matched and get offered a seat. Every year we have people turn us down, right, and stay at their current wherever they are. I expect that to stay the same, right? Like families choose consistency. They make all sorts of choices that are best for their families. Last year we had 60 in-boundary students who did not get a pre-K4 seat offer. So, and this year, what was also interesting, or for the cohort of kids this year, is there were only 6 families who didn't have sibling preference. So in other words, there were only 6 children. If you were the oldest child to come to Lafayette, there were only 6 kids who didn't have brothers or sisters in our building. That's the highest we've seen it. I think it matches the anecdotal housing trends we've seen, right? Families are buying houses, families are moving into the neighborhood, families have 2 and 3 kids. Like we're meeting lots of families. We did a survey, rookie mistake, pandemic brain, I'm not sure what you want to call it. I did not make it so that only one IP address, and I didn't make it so that you had to at first tell what grade or how old your children were. So our data is not clean, because I think there were about 200 respondents before I realized I needed to know, sort of which stakeholder group were you in? Are you in the I haven't met you yet, you have a 0 to 2-year-old stakeholder group, or are you in the whatever? What I would say is, and what I have been saying, and what's sort of very front and foremost in my mind, is we need to have explicit conversations with our incoming families to see how that will impact our enrollment. As we get to the enrollment season, which starts the beginning of April every year, being very thoughtful about our enrollment. And if we do get to the end of our in-boundary wait list and we're not fully enrolled, that might be okay in this first transition year, right? Like, so that we don't accidentally or don't exacerbate an enrollment issue or an over-enrollment issue until we see what the overall impact of being at a different site has, right? So it would be a very cautious step out. I think initially we had gotten very excited and we're like, we could open 5 classrooms of pre-K and serve more kids. And I think as I hear the hesitancy, my thought is maybe we should move more conservatively, stay with the 4 we have now, see what the demand and the need is, right, available as we move, and make sure we don't sort of overshoot our enrollment. So
you wouldn't be expecting to have in the lottery out of boundary kids accepted for pre-K4?
So I have never gotten to out of boundary children in the
Right.
pre-K lottery wait list. At 60 deep within boundary, that's another 3 classrooms.
Right.
I don't expect to do that. Yeah, I don't.
That's helpful to know.
Yeah, I mean, there's no one wins if we are over enrolled again. All right, like not our kindergarten teachers, not the rest of our building, right? So like I'm incredibly cognizant of what we do at pre-K impacts every other, grade level. And like Claudia had mentioned, kindergarten is our big wild card every year. It's right now we need 2 additional classrooms, 1 for 4th grade, 1 for 5th grade. But if kindergarten comes strong in 21, we have had years where we needed 7 sections of kindergarten and we needed an additional room. That was just tough, right? Because we don't necessarily know who you are out there. And this year is weird, right? Like,
In so many ways.
and I'm not sure where people are or where
Okay.
they're coming back or flocking back. So
Well, let me move to Jerry. Go ahead.
Question about the projections with this. Do you look at the enrollment figures for private schools such as PC and CCBC when you're looking at the number of students for pre-K or the number of students that might go into kindergarten? Or do you count on people keeping their students there because they can't get into a pre-K program and they're on a wait list?
That's a great question. It's a struggle. It's been a struggle for a long time that we work with the deputy mayor's team to on private school data. We don't have great private school data. So what we currently have is the ACS data, the American Community Service data, that does some private school projection information. We sort of look at that. DME does sort of a high level analysis of basically looking at what that private school data is, what we think the population data shows, what then that capture rate entails, and they do sort of a back of the envelope assumption. But the fact is the city just doesn't have good private school data at the granular level that we like to have it. And even the ACS does it, I think, at ward-based level. They do have it based on grade pieces. We know that there's far more participation in private schools at the high school level, as well as at the 0 to 3 level. So, but again, the trends, it's both looking at how many folks participate in private school, but then what are the trends for families that potentially move back from private to public? And we just don't have really, really great data on that. The city doesn't. The city government doesn't.
CCBC, all you need to do is walk there and watch all the kids come out all the time. It's I see them.
Yeah, but I think for us, we can look at enrollment numbers, but we need to know where they live, right? Like, are these families that actually have access in boundary to Lafayette? We know families will drive a lot of different places to go to good, early care providers. So the location of like where they live, I think, is a critical piece that we can't just do with based on just general private enrollment numbers.
And this year especially, a lot more kids are going there because they're going there. It's not virtual; they can actually go into the school.
Right.
And so you don't know how.
Quick question, if you're finished, Jerry.
Yeah.
Do you have data on the number of pre-K 4 children at Lafayette who currently get to Lafayette by car as opposed to walking? I know that's a little granular, but I'm just curious.
I don't know that. I do know that we have a drop-off line that drops off at the pre-K 4 door. I do know that, I can't remember why, but our neighbor directly next to us at one point had been clicking cars for us just to get a sense of like what the traffic flow is.
Yeah.
We serve over 100 cars a morning at some mornings. Now, which ones are 4-year-olds that hop out? I have no idea. And just to know, we would, it's in the questions later, but just while we're talking about drop-off pickup, our school has already thought about staggering start and end times, making sure that we have aftercare and before care providers at the Military Road School, making sure that we do have a drop-off line, right? The same door-to-door service, right? Like we would also have volunteers who open the doors, and it's on the back side of the building, right? Where you come down, there's actually really good traffic flow where you could take a right down, be on the right side of the road, hop out, come back up and not have to crisscross traffic. Sorry, I get a little nerdy about logistics like that. So that's all very, right. So that all exists and would be in place. We've also talked with the HSA co-presidents, just briefly, right, brainstorming about helping to organize carpools or ride shares, or, trying to be as creative and as supportive as a community as we can. Just like there are other families who go to a multitude of schools in our neighborhood, like parents drop off at Temple Sinai, parents drop off at CCPC, parents, gosh, there's a couple over on Connecticut that are escaping Is there a Baptist church one? Chevy Chase Baptist Church?
Yeah, I mean, I think the only reason I ask is that, you know, our ANC also includes the area that I represent, Hawthorne. And if you're a 4-year-old, you're more than likely driving from here to Lafayette, and you would be driving from here to the military road school. And while it is further, it's once you're in a car, it's actually not that much further in the grand scheme.
Except that there may be 2 drop-offs.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm as I've mentioned before, I have 2 young children, so I'm definitely thinking a little bit of that, and you know, my own personal situation. But there are other people who are in that situation as well. 2 drop-offs, definitely empathize with that. But I just wanted to name that piece as well.
Carrie, is there any thought about, if I can just follow up, is there any thought, Carrie, about the possibility of a shuttle bus between the 2 locations?
So I think when we think about resources and equity and transportation, DCPS does not transport students for compulsory grades, except for students who are placed because of special education. So I feel like it's sort of a hard press for resources to transport for a non-compulsory grade in a community that has quite a few resources available to it. And I mean, I think, look, the 2 drop-offs is no joke. I myself, you know, have a couple drop-offs, plus a school of my own, right? I think the thing I have shared with the community a couple of times at this point that I worry about is, if I don't have any pre-K4 rooms to offer you, you can't make a choice. You have to have another, like, you have to go somewhere else. At least if I have another, if I have pre-K4 rooms available, right, then our community members still have the ability to make a choice in a non-compulsory grade. It's not great to have 2 drop-offs. I honor that fully and thoroughly, but I do just want to sort of raise up that if I don't have any pre-K4 rooms, or if I have one and there's only 20 seats and there's 100 in-boundary families on the wait list, we have essentially forced the 2 drop-off issue anyway, except to a few select. And that does not feel good as a community leader, to leave my community without a choice for free, high quality public pre-K early childhood education.
We certainly value the pre-K as well, and we don't want to lose those options and those opportunities for parents in our neighborhood. We're just looking for the best alternative to be able to provide that in the way that's going to be best for everyone.
Yep. And I appreciate that. And like I said, our LSAT has been working on that for 4 years. And we are at this place where I have pulled every rabbit out of every hat that we have available to us, including building 8 classrooms in a brand new modernized building, you know, rearranging room usage, you know, all of these pieces. And I think the part that I don't want people to miss is that we are at a binary choice. There are no more options in the right now. And I don't want folks, I don't want us to miss the right decision or sort of cloud a decision. I hear that there are lots of concerns about process, and I know that there are concerns about the Brightwood community. And I think we would have to be incredibly mindful as any, you know, community members, right? And I honor all of that, but I do just want to, you know, share pretty directly that there are no more options within the building. In fact, we've renovated the basement. There's no undone space in the basement. There are 4 brand new classrooms downstairs. Yeah. So I just wanted to raise that up for us in a sort of like really clear way.
Right. Thank you, Carrie. You mentioned that there are going to be after school programs at LAM.
Our aftercare provider. Aftercare provider. Yep. Our aftercare provider. I've already chatted with her and she's ready to roll.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I have not yet talked to CCPC, also does some aftercare and transports kids from our building to theirs. So I need to check in with them. I just haven't been able to connect with them with the different buildings being closed and open and such, but that would be my intent as well.
We talked earlier about the 8 classrooms there, 6 large classrooms and now 2 small classrooms. Is there going to be any other use of those classrooms, those smaller classrooms, or is that just going to be empty? at least for next year. Andrea,
Carrie, I'll
you're
let
the
you
right person.
probably answer this. We actually did a tour last week with Carrie and 4 of her early childhood teachers, and they got super excited, and we're thinking about a lot of different ways to use those 2 lower. I think I had they threw out 10 different ideas. So they were an art room and a library, but probably something related to specials for those early childhood students.
Yep, that's right. The pre-K teachers were like beside themselves with excitement. So they've already identified where they would place their special education service providers, where they would place their occupational therapist, where they would have the speech pathologist go, where the library would be. There's a really cute room for the library, I'm not gonna lie. It was beautiful. Where our Miss Pearl, she does early childhood specials for our pre-K. You know, she has art and music and PE. We have 2 PE teachers. So they had already processed through that while those classrooms are not yet like classroom ready, they are spaces that could be brushed up into these multi-purpose use spaces so that kids had other places to go. There was a great common space that they were talking about that too. Yes, and to Mr. Rooney in the chat, there would be before care as well, before and after care. Sorry, but I missed that.
How about individualized education plans? How are those going to be handled at LAM?
Same. So currently right now what we have is usually a set of providers serves my early grade. So it would be a resource teacher, so a special education teacher. We have a full complement. In fact, we have a couple of each, of an occupational therapist, a physical therapist, a speech language pathologist. We have an early childhood social worker at this point. We have an early childhood counselor. So yeah, it would be a full service model, just there.
Are there going to, yes, Jerry, go ahead.
I have a current and a future question. I'll ask my future question first. Since this seems to be an ever-growing problem and there doesn't seem to be a great solution, you mentioned that Lafayette's going to be at 130% in a couple of years. Has DCPS started looking at other locations to build new schools? I'll just throw out there Lord and Taylor on Western Avenue, a huge space. It's going to be empty. They'll probably or something, since they're probably jealous of what Rosalind did yesterday, and they'll want to, you know, that's an opportunity. And even more closer to a time frame, has DPS considered anything that has to do with the community center library new campus that's going to be built on Connecticut Avenue as a new facility? If they considered putting any pre-K classrooms in there, because that's happened in other locations, if not in DC, in the regional area, that they have community centers that have specialized pre-K classes there. That money's budgeted for, I think, in 2 years. That if DCPS chipped in a bit more money, they probably could get a facility that includes all of those things. Has there been any consideration to either one of those activities?
Andrea?
Yeah, so I think the first one about available space, I think that is something we've been targeting, and we don't have anything, you know, concrete or in the works, but as an urban school district, and we've seen this even with our neighbors in the city of Alexandria, converting an office building into a school has become something that across the country, different cities have been doing. I toured the one that the city of Alexandria actually transformed. It was absolutely wonderful. It was an elementary school. I think you can do that really for any grade level if you have the right building, and that is something Claudia and I have talked about many times. We have looked sort of up and down both Wisconsin and Connecticut, and I think are very interested in that if we can find the right opportunity. Again, I think for us, it would likely need to be a purchase. We've had a couple reach out, same lease opportunity, and have had to have, unfortunately, the same discussion that we had around ECC. So if that purchase opportunity comes our way, we would definitely be more than interested in considering that.
In the community center library?
We have not had any detailed conversations around that. We are definitely open to having conversations. We certainly partner with DC agencies all the time, most notably probably DPR, but we do have a small partnership with the libraries as well. So we're certainly open to that if they're interested, and I'm happy to reach out to them.
Okay. I just have one final question. Could I ask
Go
one?
ahead, Jerry.
Is this all a done deal? Is this a done deal? Is this what's going to happen?
No,
So
no,
what might
it's not a
change?
done deal.
So what are the alternatives if it's not a done deal?
I mean, I think, again, I think there's sort of two decision points. The first is whether or not we're going to leverage it for Lafayette. And I think that decision has not yet been made. And obviously that then triggers, what does this mean for, if we don't leverage it for Lafayette, then what are the alternatives that we have to use it for? And so we have not yet determined either one of those, either one of those two things have not yet, those decisions have not made. I mean, but I think, again, per what we've always said, and even I think, I don't know if it was Randers or whoever sort of read this, like the initial impetus for leveraging the space was initially geared towards trying to relieve overcrowding in nearby schools. So if we look at what that data says, obviously acutely is Lafayette, but then like I mentioned before, Brightwood is on our watch list. Like, so we would want to, like, again, we would want to think about what are some of the space facility constraints that we have in nearby schools, and think about whether this is something that if we can't do it for Lafayette, would this help serve or alleviate that for any other schools like Brightwood or something?
If this isn't
So
done, what's the alternative for Lafayette?
say that again.
If this isn't leveraged for Lafayette, what's the alternative for Lafayette?
We would close 2
Oh.
pre-K classrooms
Yeah.
so that we have enough classroom space for 4th and 5th grade. So we would go down from 4 to 2. So we would go from 80 pre-K lottery seats to 40 lottery seats.
Okay, so you're saying Lafayette community either takes this or they lose 2 classrooms.
That's what I have on the table right now. I have to put compulsory grade levels in classrooms.
And we
Yeah.
don't have other space, like I promise you, Andrea and I are not sitting on another space option that we don't want to put forward. That's like, if we had a space option that was closer, that would not, that would be more welcome to families, we would love to put that on the table first, because I would love to go into a process like this where we have much more sort of support on this. So, but my concern is that I don't have anything, like we don't have anything ready available to address this right now if we don't use this. So I think we just have to be super honest about that and what that means.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
there's still a lot of questions that remain. We're running out of time rapidly for our meeting here. This is not the end of the discussion by any means, however. We will continue to talk with DCPS. We'll continue to talk to the community. There's going to be an ANC meeting on January 11th. I would expect then we may consider further recommendations that we might consider. The one thing I would emphasize now, I think, is that we really do want you to do whatever you can to explore possible alternatives. I mean, one we didn't mention is the new rec center that's going to be at in Lafayette Park, and that will be open by next year, and that could be a possibility. I don't know whether it is or not. I don't have any idea whether that would be suitable, but that's right there at the campus. So, would be very convenient. The other thing I would emphasize is and Carrie mentioned this earlier, that the process has not been ideal by any means, and I mean, for not to have consulted the community until late November, when the decision to purchase the site was made much earlier, and Lafayette was in mind when they purchased it. It would have been very much better if we could have involved the community and the ANC at a very early stage in this process. Then I think we could have, you could have answered a lot of these questions at that time. I think it would be helpful now. And also I emphasize too, the need to involve the Brightwood community. I really think that's important from an equity standpoint. I know they are very interested, the community there is very interested in knowing what's going on, and the ANC has not had information about this. And I just saw in the Q&A or the chat that Candace Nelson indicated that she had not gotten any notice when the purchase was made. She's the ANC commissioner for that particular single member district. So I would just urge DCPS in the future, and certainly in connection with this instance, to be as open and communicative as possible with the community, because we really do need to know about these proposed changes that affect people's lives very, very intensely. So, I know, very much appreciate the interest that the community has, and particularly the parents who are going to be affected by this.
Yeah, I do want to say, one, I appreciate the opportunity to sort of have us come and answer the questions. It was super helpful to have your Q&A document to sort of guide us through the discussion. I think that was I completely own that this is not the way that the process and the timeline is definitely not what we would have wanted. And so I completely acknowledge that this feels rushed. This feels like a big decision that is happening in a short amount of time. There's a couple things that I will say. I don't want people to think we were somehow hiding the ball on this. I will be completely honest. While the process started much earlier in the spring, we knew it was sort of using for overcrowding. We did not get the confirmation until the end of September that the purchase went through and was happen. And then we thought land was going to be there for another year. They were going to lease it back from us for another year. When then that fell through, it was ready, it didn't need capital funds. And this was all at the time where reopening hit, and we were sort of knee deep in reopening and are we coming back or not? I don't want to say that I don't want to come off as like these are excuses, because I completely hear and acknowledge the fact that this could have been done with more time and more inclusive and more thoughtful. And so I definitely hear where folks are feeling about that, and I completely own that. But I note that because it was not done out of an intention to hide the ball or to sort of push this through fast. Not at all. That was definitely not why this happened. It was just a combination of a lot of things that got it.
And this has been an extraordinary year for all of us. We'll be glad when it's over.
Yep. And can I just, Commissioner Speck, share again? I hear a lot of conversation about we aren't exploring creative options, which worries me, because I feel like people aren't able to hear us say that while there may be creative options that serve 3 to 5 years down the road, there is not an option that serves next year. And I think that our insistence to continue to go back to options that have been shared as to why they won't work by the expert teams who sit here, by myself, by our LSAT, by our teachers, by our parent volunteers, is worrisome, right? It makes me feel like people, well, not feel, are just saying that we're, not problem solving, which is just not true. And while I understand that people want to believe that there is a different option for right now, it's not before us, right? It could be in 3 to 5 years or 2 to 5 years, but as the leader of the school community, I have to make a decision for next year that allows us to be who we are, right? And to serve as many of our families that we can. And so I just want to continue to say it clearly. The 4th graders that are already in the building for next year and the 5th graders who are already in the building do not have classrooms for next year. The reality is they have to, and that's not projected enrollment. That's not out of boundary families. That's not any new families. That is the kids who literally sit in our 3rd and 4th grade right now. And so I have to keep pushing us to hear the reality of this. I would not come to have this conversation just for fun, because we might have a few other things we could try, right? There would be a different tone or tenor, like these are the things we could try. And so I'm I'm a little worried that people still don't seem to be able to hear that there are no other options for the immediate future.
Okay, we've heard, I think. Any other commissioners have any comments? I really regret that we haven't been able to get to all the questions that are in the Q&A, and we just can't go on all night. It would take us another full meeting.
What to do with those questions?
Abe, can you capture those for us somehow?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. We will capture those, and to the best of our ability, we will pass them along to DCPS and see if we can get responses, and then we'll post those on our website. I'm not sure when we can do that. We're in the midst of a transition here between commissions as well. So but we take this very seriously, and certainly at our January 11th meeting, this is going to come up again, and we're going to consider it again before the decision is made, and see if we can't give you a little bit more of our guidance based on all the responses that you've given us and all the information that you've given us. And we really do appreciate that. And it's not just the information we've got tonight, but at the two previous meetings. I was at all of those meetings, sat through to the very end. So I do appreciate all the information that you've communicated to us, particularly Carrie. We do really appreciate that.
Thank you. And then, like I said, I appreciate being here, and yeah, and it's,
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. I think we need to go on. Commissioners have any other comments or? Okay. All right. We'll move on to our next agenda item then. Thank you very much, all of you, for being here and for all the work that you're doing to try to solve this very, very difficult problem. I understand the difficulty. Thank you a lot.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay. The next item on the agenda is one that I know a lot of people are also very interested in, and that is the Task Force on Racism and the good work that the task force has done over the last 6 months. This has been, I think, a keystone part of the commission's work over the last 6 months, and a lot of people have participated in those task forces. We've had, I think, about 30 people who have worked diligently on the task force. Just as a little bit of the history, on June 8th, the commission adopted a statement on racism, and that created the task force to identify equity and justice issues within our community and to propose concrete solutions. And that was discussed again at our June 22nd meeting. And on July 3rd, we discussed a framework for the task force's work. And that was then developed and posted on our website as well. The task force then began its work, and this was purely a volunteer effort by anyone who wanted to participate. It was not limited in any way, and anyone who wanted to participate could join. And we met for the first time in an organizational meeting on July 15th. And I think there were about 27 people who attended that meeting. And at that time, we decided to break up into 3 different working groups because the issues were different, and we thought it would be better and more efficient to work in 3 different groups. One was community, one was education and health, and the other was housing. And each task force member was able to join whichever working group that they wanted. And some people were on more than one working group. Then, as suggested in our framework for the task force, we had a timetable for when a report was supposed to be prepared, and it was prepared on time by all of the groups for our October 26th meeting. And following that meeting, some of the work groups, all of the work groups, I guess, made some changes to the report. And then based on that, those draft reports, there was a town hall meeting that was held on November 16th to get community questions and comments. And that was attended by about 40 people, not including the task force members who attended as well. There were a lot of things that were not addressed in the reports, however, and certainly the details of implementation were not focused on in any significant way. And there were also a lot of questions that were raised particularly at the town hall meeting. And it was clear that there was a lot of community interest and concern, and that they needed to be more fully involved in the process. And so many of the people there that attended that meeting on the town hall urged us to allow more time for discussion and comment to evaluate the report and its recommendations. And as we all mentioned at the beginning of this meeting tonight, the current commissioners' terms, 5 of the current commissioners' terms end on December 31st, and only Chris and I are going to be continuing for the next commission. So after a lot of study and thought, and I will tell you that I have spent a great deal of time over the last 2 or 3 weeks working on this issue. I had hoped that we would be able to at least make some determinations as to some of the recommendations, and not all of them. But it was going to be just too much work to do, I think, for the remaining time, and a lot of questions still remained unanswered. And so I think the commission and other commissioners can chime in on this as well, but the work that was done by the task forces was really phenomenal, and it was really quite good. And other ANCs around the city, other community groups around the city have noticed all of this already, and they've said, you know, this was really a remarkable effort that ANC3 put in. And so I think just the process has been very valuable for all of those who participated and for the community. But at this point, given the short time available between now and the end of the year, it's really just not possible for us to go through each of those recommendations and to reach conclusions on all of them. So here is what the operative part of the proposed resolution is: that in light of the breadth and complexity of the issues addressed by the task force reports, including the concerns raised by some about some missing aspects of the reports that are noted in the resolution as well, things like implementation strategies, the need for additional community engagement, and the fact that the new commission must assume responsibility for helping to implement any final approved reports and recommendations. The commission accepts the above recommendations, all the recommendations that have been made are accepted by the commission, requests that the task force continue its work assisting the commission at the commission's direction in its ongoing community engagement and development of implementation strategies, and defers any additional action on the reports above and beyond this resolution to the new commission for its consideration in 2021. As I mentioned before, I wish we could have done more. I think the time just got away from us. It's the end of the year. We're also in the middle of the pandemic. And so all of these things have made it more difficult to take a further step, which I would have preferred really to do. But we are where we are. And I think this is the resolution that is before the commission at this point. Any of the other commissioners have something they would like to add? Jerry?
I just want to clarify. So in the resolution that you were reading from has 9 points, and you were reading from the 9th. And when it says that the commission accepts the above recommendations, you're talking about the recommendations 1 through 8 of this resolution, correct?
Well, that's interesting. I had thought that it would refer to the recommendations that had been made. We just accept them. We're not. No, how did you construe that then, Jerry?
I read that as the commission accepts the above recommendations, the above meaning 1 through 8.
1 through 8 really aren't recommendations, though. They're just descriptions of what's happened.
Then recommendations should be changed, but the commission accepts the above statements and requests that the task force continue work assisting, as you read, assisting the commission at the commission's direction in its ongoing community engagement and development of implementation strategies, and defers any additional action on the report to the new commission.
Okay.
Because as I read this, and that number 9, as you started reading it, referred to paragraph 5 above, and paragraph 5 takes into account implementation strategies, timeframes, estimated levels of work, who would be responsible people, organization, agencies to carry them out, in the community engagement. And that's how I read that those were the above statements that the commission is accepting.
Okay. All right.
I'll leave it to the other.
That was ambiguous to me. I read it differently, but that's if we can change it to statements in paragraphs 1 through 8.
Right.
Okay, instead of recommendations.
Chris, Abe, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree with you, Jerry.
I mean, I think what we're basically saying is we appreciate the work that all these people have done. I mean, it's really a tremendous amount of work. I mean, you can go onto their website and read the meeting notes, and there's a lot of work that's been done, and there's a lot of work to still do, both in terms of engaging the community and then actually implementing any recommendation that this ANC chooses to accept or to implement. And I think, especially given the number of commissioners who are stepping off, it makes sense for us to say, we've started this, or this group of commissioners has started this with a lot of help from the community, and we want it to continue. But it would be kind of premature for us to say, here's what we're going to do, or here's what you should do. And not just premature, but sort of unrealistic, because the first meeting in January, the new 7 commissioners could decide to do something different. And so I don't think we want to say you have to do this or you have to do that. And so I think this resolution is fair, and that it lets the next commission decide exactly where they're going to go, but we're encouraging them to continue this work. And I think that makes sense. That's what I'm planning to vote for. And that's what makes sense and feels right to me.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, there were a lot of recommendations made, and most of them had merit. Some had more merit than others. And we had developed a resolution prior to this, but it was so long and complicated. We just ran out of time trying to resolve each individual resolution that were made by the 3 committees. So I think it's best that the new commission, takes up these suggestions one at a time and decides what we're going to do about it. My main concern about some of the suggestions is that if all have been adopted the way they were written, the ANC wouldn't have time to do any work at all, except working on these task forces. It was just a tremendous amount of work that was discussed in the resolutions. And I think a lot of that work needs to be done, but it needs to be done by others than our commission. They need to go to the Board of Education or the mayor's office or the city council for suggested resolutions.
Yeah, I think as we were talking about all of the, 5, 8, 11, however many in each of the 3 reports, these are the things that people were pointing out. The lack of an implementation strategy, how long it would take to do this, who would be responsible for doing it. And I think that's what we're saying in this paragraph 5, that, let's keep working on things. Let's address these issues. Let's involve the community and, build on the good work that's been done.
And let me say too, that I am continuing on the commission, of course, and I will continue to be very interested in and active on these issues. They're near and dear to my heart, and I hope to continue to communicate with the community. I want to hear from the community about these things, but I think the new commission will be in a position to take some action on whatever priorities they set. That's going to be really up to the new commission. It was always going to be the case that the commission in 2021 is going to have to do whatever implementation there is on these recommendations. This commission was never going to be able to follow through on all of the recommendations, no matter what. And so really the impetus has to come from the new commission in any case. And I am going to do my best to make sure that we do follow up and that we continue to press on issues that are important to our community. I see Gary Thompson's got his hand up, former commissioner, former chair of the commission, and also a member of the task force. Gary, Abe, you want to let Gary talk?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Gary.
All right, thank you so much. I do want to comment on this, but before the meeting ends, I also wanted to say thank you very publicly to Commissioner Jerry Mallitz and Abe Clayman for their service on the ANC. I think Dan is not here as well, but it's volunteer work. It's a lot of work. So thank you so much for everything. It's tremendous. I happened to be on this task force. I'd been kind of absent from ANC activities for a while, but I task force, like many people after the George Floyd protest, because of the feeling that we've got to do more here in Chevy Chase to be awake and engage on these issues. And I think I speak for everybody on all three of the subgroups when I emphasize just how much work went into these reports. The last 6 months, we met every week. It was a tremendous amount of input. We were commissioned basically by this ANC to proceed. I think there were 2 public meetings about it, our draft reports and then public comment. And I think the time is now to adopt the task force recommendations. I don't think I'm going to change anybody's mind this evening, but I think I speak for almost everybody on the 3 subgroups and the majority of the community when I say, I think the time is now to adopt the recommendations. And I understand that housing recommendation number 5 is controversial because it gets into duplexes and triplexes and density. And that's a bit controversial. So I thought that the right and wise result would be to table that one, but otherwise adopt the remainder of the task force recommendations, really out of respect and deference to the 3 subgroups. And I think I'm worried that the new commission is sort of on a blank slate and doesn't have the full knowledge that you all have. And you certainly have the authority, and I think should adopt the recommendations, but for housing recommendation number 5. And I'm worried that we don't want to let the tail wag the dog here. When you get into housing, it gets controversial and it can shut down everything else. And we've kind of forgotten where this started, which is let's do something here in Chevy Chase in the wake of the George Floyd protest and the Black Lives Matter movement. Let's get it done. And I think we will. There's time with the new commission with fresh energy to follow through on every recommendation made by every subgroup, possibly including everything in the housing subgroup recommendation. But I guess I just wanted to speak up and partly just say, to acknowledge how much work was done by everybody on every subgroup, how hard we worked to get us to this point, and how we feel a little disappointed right now. I guess, but we're trying to tell ourselves, don't worry, we're gonna regroup. Soon enough, a new commission will get us there. So if I were on the commission, and I think Commissioner Tuck Garfield said this at the outset, I would vote to adopt the recommendations, maybe but for recommendation number 5 in the housing report. I just wanted to throw that out there. But again, thank you so much, everybody.
Yeah, I would like to just answer that, Gary. I don't think you have too much to worry about the recommendations in the education and the community subgroup and most of the other recommendations in the housing group. I think most of the new commissioners are in favor of most of those recommendations. I do think the housing subgroup, almost all the recommendations in the housing subgroup are going to affect how people live in our area. And, even the density increases on Connecticut Avenue, I basically favor them, but it's not going to affect me that much. Folks that live within the block, within a block or two of Connecticut Avenue and between Livingston and the Circle are going to be affected a lot. All of a sudden their parking is going to get much harder. There's going to be a lot more traffic. So I think they need to have a say in what goes on, on these recommendations. I don't think they should be rushed through, at least the housing group ones. That's my personal feeling. And I think that's the feeling of the community also. We need to have more time for the community to buy into on this and not try to rush it through.
Yeah, I want to speak to one aspect of this, and that's the community engagement. So we just saw in discussions about Lafayette. So on December 2nd, December 9th, there were 2 town hall meetings about it. And today, the 14th, an ANC meeting. I'm looking at a calendar over here. So over the last 12 days, there have been 3 meetings that 350 people attended. Granted, a lot of those were doubles, maybe triples, but 350 people. The 2 times that we met about it, we had about 40 people that weren't task force members show up. And we hear even from the Lafayette group how there hasn't been enough time. They want to ask more questions. And community engagement, I think, is paramount in anything that we do. And I think that community engagement needs to continue. It needs to be more formalized. We even mentioned at one of the meetings that all the questions that weren't answered would be answered and posted to our website. Well, we never did that. And I heard from a lot of constituents, what about those questions that you said you were going to post answers to? So I'm very concerned that making people think that they didn't have the opportunity when we could see with something like Lafayette how they crave that opportunity to get more involved in a decision-making process and how important that is in this area.
We've got two commissioners-elect who have raised their hand. Can you let John Higgins and Lisa Gore speak, Abe? Thank you. Lisa, you want to start?
Yes, so just to start off to say, I don't know if Shonda is still on, but just to publicly thank her for all the work that she's done on the task force work, and to also thank the outgoing commission, because it was under your leadership that this whole project started. I do think with the discussions that we've had between the incoming and outgoing commission, that the incoming commission will definitely take this project and move it forward. So I do want to alleviate some concerns. I feel very confident with that. One of my concerns in looking at the resolution, and I have not seen the resolution, and Randy, I see that you posted that it will be made available. I have some slight concerns with paragraph number 5. I would like it to be balanced and make sure that the public understands that the objectives of that final report some of the information that is contained in paragraph 5, those were not the objectives of the final report. So we did not prepare those reports with the intention of doing implementation plans and all the community engagement pieces that need to go into a project like this. And I do want to make the community very aware that and I was part of the community group, that has always been at the forefront of our minds, that there is a tremendous amount of implementation that has to go forward to include, as Jerry said, formal community engagement. And that's a core mission of the community group, who I think if those recommendations were approved, at least for the community group, they could help start that process. So it wouldn't be the commissioners taking up this whole entire ball. There's actually a group of people that are willing to do that. So I hope the commission would kind of look at that paragraph number 5 and maybe make that a little bit more balanced and take into account the mandate that was given the groups at the time when the final report objectives were issued.
Okay, thanks, Lisa. John?
Yes, I would accept Randy's proposal as written. I don't have it before me. Lisa may make some good points there. I think if we frame this in the circumstance that we accept the report rather than adopt the report. Adopt could mean we might be setting some expectations which we may not be able to deliver on in the future. And I'd like to have us have a little bit of flexibility as we go about this, particularly on the implementation side. I think that's pretty much, where we're going to be taking off. So anyway, I thank Randy for that proposal. We're not going to neglect this, that's for sure. And I would just like to, I think the approach that Randy took is something that I could work with and work very hard at.
Thanks, John. I just want to make clear that this is the product of a lot of effort by all the commissioners to come to a consensus on what we could do. It might not represent what any of us individually would think was the optimal solution. But I echo what Lisa and John have said, that I think that the new commission is going to be very attentive to this issue, and that we will certainly not let it slide. Connie Chang is also on the task force and will be on the commission, and then Peter Goslin has really gotten up to speed quickly, and I think he's ready to help out on this as well. So I'm confident that the new commission is going to be very attentive to it. So, okay, any commissioners have anything else they would like to add? Okay, I agree with the comment that Lisa made about maybe making a change in paragraph 5 so that we can make it clear that the reports were never, the task force really was not ever asked to do implementation strategies, timeframes, estimated levels of effort, or who would be responsible for carrying them out. That really is, I think, something that was beyond the scope of certainly what we charged them with at the beginning. And I think maybe that needs to be made clear. Does anyone have an objection to doing that?
Yes, I do, actually.
Okay.
We spent a lot of time hammering this out, Randy. And I think we all agreed it's a compromise that we can all live with. I'm not in favor of any last minute changes. I think I think paragraph 5 is very worthwhile, because many of the recommendations in the reports are going to have a lot of consequences as far as time goes. I think that's part of our task going forward. The new commission has got to not only accept, if they're going to accept a recommendation, they have to figure out how it's going to be implemented. I mean, that's part of it. That's the whole point of this paragraph 5. And I think it's an important paragraph, and I think it needs to stay in there. And if it's going to change,
I'm not suggesting taking it out by any means. What I'm just suggesting.
We all compromised on this, and you know, and we said we were going to vote for it the way it is, and then if you know, I don't.
Well, I'm not opposed though to a good suggestion from someone. If there's a good suggestion, even now, I certainly would take it. We took Jerry's suggestion about paragraph 9, and I think that's an appropriate change that he suggested just for clarification. But I would.
If you want to come up with a new language we can agree on right now, that's fine, but it's not going to be that easy.
I would just change the first line to say, instead of the recommendations do not include implementation strategies, the recommendations were not intended to include.
I don't see how that changes anything.
I think you could say even more than that. You know, the recommendations of the work group in their original charge, you know, addressed ABC, but it did not include these things. So you could say what the charge was. I don't know what the charge was exactly.
Well, it's in the framework for the task force. That's all there.
Just repeat those words.
Okay, with that modification, is that okay, Chris?
Sure, it's fine.
Okay, I will undertake to do that, and I will circulate the modification tomorrow to all of the commissioners. Okay, with that modification, which I think addresses Lisa's issue, I'll move that we adopt this resolution. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor? 4-0. Okay. All right. Thank you very much. And I just cannot thank enough all of the members of the task forces and the working groups for a remarkable effort and for spending a huge amount of time on this and producing what I consider to be a really outstanding product that the commission, the entire commission, can be proud of, I think. Okay, we have a number of things for commission business. The first is to adopt the minutes from the November 9th meeting. Those minutes were posted on our website and posted on various listservs. All those in favor of adopting the minutes? 4-0. Okay, the next item we need to handle, and this comes up because Shanda is no longer the treasurer, we have to have, for the purposes of the interim time period between today and January 11th, when the new commission meets, we cannot sign a check. We can't do anything financially without a treasurer. It doesn't make any difference whether the treasurer is signing a particular document. We have to have a treasurer. And so I've been informed by Gottlieb Simon that it's necessary for us to elect an interim treasurer for this time period. It should be someone who is going to continue for the next year after December 31st, so that if anything comes up between the 1st and the 11th, we'll have someone. And it also cannot be me, because the statute prohibits the chair from also being the treasurer. So I would nominate Chris as interim treasurer only until the time period when the new commission elects a treasurer, so that we can just take care of any necessary actions that need to be taken between now and January 11th. I don't really expect anything to come up, but we just need to have that available. So is there a second for that? Okay, all those in favor? 4-0. Okay. Congratulations, Chris.
That was my first job when I started 12 years ago. So.
Okay, the next item is each year, the ANC is required to adopt a budget for the fiscal year. And the fiscal year began on October 1st. We have not adopted a budget for that year. it would be helpful if we can do it tonight. Chris had some questions, I think, about the budget that I circulated.
Yeah, the numbers don't make any sense. They're numbers,
Well,
they're numbers that come out of nowhere, so we need to talk about it. So,
okay, well, I'm not going to be able to tell you everything. I can tell you some of it. If you had a particular question, for instance, about the district allotments.
no, it's going to be hard to do. I mean, we should just talk about it.
Okay, then we'll just table, we'll postpone consideration of the budget until the January 11th meeting. Okay, the quarterly financial report. We also have that's been prepared. Shanda and Alan worked very hard to get this done. Any questions about the quarterly financial report? This is for the third quarter of fiscal year 2020, which would be from April through June. Okay, I move that we adopt the quarterly financial report. Is there a second? All those in favor? 4-0. Okay, thank you. Okay, finally, not finally, penultimately, we have 2 checks that need to be approved. The first is for Verizon, $153.02, and that's for the bill, I think, for November. And I believe it may be October's bill. And then the second is for the Advisory Neighborhood Commission Security Fund fee. And this comes up after January 1st, but because we're going to have completely new officers next year, Gottlieb Simon has advised that it would be useful to approve that $25 check with this commission so that the check can be cut before we have to have new bank signature cards in 2021, which may take some time. And so in order to expedite the process of being able to give that $25 check that provides essentially insurance for the officers of the commission, he suggested that we approve it at this meeting. Is there any question or comment about that? Okay, I would move that we approve those 2 checks for $153.02 to Verizon and for $25 to the ANC Security Fund.
second.
All those in favor? 4-0. Okay. Okay, we have a lot of business to do on the January 11th meeting. That's the typical things that the ANC has to do when they first organize, with electing officers, adopting bylaws, adopting a meeting schedule, and all those things. I feel sure that we will also be discussing the Lafayette issue, which will be continuing at that point. And we may well have something to do with regard to the task force reports that the commission wants to take up then, but that'll be up to the new commission and what they want to include on their agenda. Okay, one final thing I want to say is I have thoroughly enjoyed working with Jerry and Abe and Becky and Dan. That's been, and Shanda I mentioned earlier, but that's been a real pleasure. And I want to say, Jerry particularly, you have done yeoman's duty in so many different ways. And the commission has benefited enormously from your energy, from your talents, from the skill that you have. And I really appreciate it, all you've done. I mean, some of the things on the community center and on the comprehensive plan and on the newsletter that you put out, all of those things have just been stellar. And I really do appreciate your contributions to the commission. And Abe,
Appreciate that.
Abe, I'll let you have a response if you want. Abe has been a rock through the entire 4 years that he's been on the commission. He's been my go-to guy for understanding the kind of norms that we ought to have for the commission the kinds of procedures that are going to make our operations work better. He's done a great job as secretary. I mean, he's really transformed the way that we're doing our minutes, I think, in a much more efficient way. And then his running as co-host of these meetings when we've been on Zoom has been terrific. I appreciated not having to deal with that myself, and have somebody who is adept at doing it. And then just your good judgment, Abe. I mean, I just really think you have been, like I said, a rock that I could go to and say, what do you think about this, Abe? And I know I get a good, thoughtful answer. So I really do appreciate that. So
You're welcome. Thank you. Like I said, it's really been a pleasure. And I think, I get asked all the time, is this something I should do? Should I join an ANC? Should I run for it? Would you recommend it? And I say 100% I'd recommend it. It's been a wonderful experience. I feel really lucky to have the experience. And I'm not going to miss it tomorrow, probably in January, but I will miss it.
okay, let's see if there's anybody still watching us. Yeah, we still got a few people out there. Thank you for sticking to the end.
3 wonderful years and 3 out of 4 ain't bad. Da-da-da.
Okay, and for Chris, I look forward to another 2 years with you. And it's been a pleasure and will continue to be a pleasure. So we're gonna do great things in the next 2 years, just as we have for the last 4, 6, or 8. For me, this is ending 8 years, and Chris has been on even longer than that. Okay, thank you all, and thank all of the people who attended tonight. It was a good discussion, I thought, on Lafayette, and I'm looking forward to resolving some of these issues in the next year. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
We're adjourned.
Be seeing you.